Yo, what is going on, everyone? 4 for 4 Philly Sports with your host, Jacob Smedley. Just wanted to hop on talk about the big news that happened here in Philly sports. Well, getting baseball ready. The Sixers have been playing well. Flyers just got back. COVID protocols. But I wanted to dive into the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles trading Carson Wentz to the Indianapolis Colts for a 2021 third-round pick and a 2022 second that can turn into a first based on, I think it's the percentage that Carson Wentz plays. I think it's 70, 75%, what have you. And, I don't know. I don't know how I feel. Do I think the Eagles got robbed? Yes. For what Carson Wentz was at a time, to imagine that this guy would end up being worth picks, and not even first-round picks. One can turn into a first and a third. Carson Wentz, 3 years ago, you're talking about a hefty draft capital to even pry him away from the organization. And, you look at it, and I look at it big picture, too, where, okay, and this is where the problem is. Yes, Doug and Carson, awful year last year. Carson, one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, and Doug Peterson had a very rough year coaching. And then you look at the others responsible, Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie, all are at fault here. But, what was the plan this offseason? Because it seemed like the general public going into this offseason, failed to make the playoffs in a winnable division, of course, being the worst in the league and one of the worst in history based on the other team. Where do you go from here? Carson Wentz played bad. Do you get rid of him, or do you get rid of Peterson? It seemed like one or the other, and it's just surprising how it went down. And I feel like it could have happened way better for multiple parties involved. You have Peterson, he gets canned, which uproar of disagreement, and I'm all for that. I am in the crowd where I'd rather have a year of Doug without Howie Roseman running the show than the other way around. And okay, he gets the boot. All right, so that's the implication, or at least from the viewpoint of the fan, that you're going to go with the guy that you paid all this money to. And Carson Wentz, you have all this money tied down to, which that's a whole nother thing in itself, the contract, and then the drafting of Jalen Hurts the next year. But, okay, you're going to stick with Carson. Then you're going to trade Carson to the Colts for 2 picks. And now you have all this dead money, the most dead cap in the history of the NFL. I think it's $38 million off the top of my head. So you have that now on the table for a guy that's not even going to be playing. I know the Rams are in a similar situation with Jared Goff, traded to the Lions. But, you're looking at that now, and I do not trust the front office. Right now, I think it's safe to say, looking at it at a broad perspective here, the Eagles front office is by far the worst in the city sports. There's no question whatsoever. And I'm going back to, I guess, the most recent upload here, the Sixers. We talked about their off-season overhaul, and it started at the top. It started with Daryl Morey. It started with Harris and the Blitzer Company to bring in these guys to make the decisions and put the team in the right position to win. And you even look at the Phillies, too. You bring in Dave Dombrowski. You bring him in. You move Sam Ford into the general manager spot. It's reaping dividends so far. I mean, of course, the season hasn't started. And then you have the Eagles. You have the Eagles who have Howie Roseman. I don't know what's going on, if he's paying someone off or something. I mean, he has had bad draft after bad draft, bad offseason after bad offseason. I mean, it just seems like the roster is in a rough spot. I mean, the drafting has been horrible. I mean, look at the past however many years of the talent that has been left out on the board. And then you look at the free agents. They're bringing guys back who shouldn't be brought back. Jason Peters, Alshon Jeffrey. I mean, the one thing he's good at is reworking contracts. But get me a accounting degree. Get me some more financial knowledge, and I can do that. It's just there's a certain point where I think Jeffrey Lurie has to take at least that Middleton. I mean, I don't really like Middleton at this point. I mean, I know we're crossing over into the Phillies here, but you have to at some point say what is going to result in winning for the team. What can result in winning in the shortest amount of time, and that is giving Howie Roseman the axe. I mean, everyone's calling for it now. I mean, how can you go from, okay, so all this has transpired, and not be a bit accountable on yourselves as well, and be, hey, maybe Howie Roseman and all of us collectively maybe should have thought back. How did we get here? How did we get here? We offered Carson Wentz a massive contract, one of the biggest in the game at the time. And after, yes, he had an MVP caliber season in 2017, but he hasn't had one season really where he has been able to replicate that success for a full season. You give him the money, okay. I mean, that's fine. If you're willing to do that, it's risky. I don't think it should have happened then, but okay. Then you make the decision to draft Jalen Hurts. And again, I feel bad for Jalen Hurts. He's in this situation, and I know kind of transitioning away from the Carson Wentz trade and back to that as well. But then you draft Jalen Hurts. See, that is where this all stems from. If you had doubts about Carson Wentz, then why did you give him the money then? I mean, that's what it all comes down to. I know we're looking at hindsight here, but I mean, these events happened within a year of each other. I mean, Carson Wentz was paid in 2019. You draft Jalen Hurts in 2020 draft. And, I mean, this happened so close to one another. You pay Carson Wentz at the end of 2019. Isn't there some process? I mean, you can't just imagine, like, the thought process just finally came into the organization's head, like, a month before the draft. There's no way that could have happened. I mean, you look at, outside of football and other things, if you have faint of suspicion, why would you do it? Or why would you jump into something so risky as that contract with some suspicion in play that maybe Wentz is not as reliable as you thought he was? And then that goes into the Hurts pick. Then you have Hurts, and then you have these two guys. And again, both of them, Wentz professional until the benching happened. It seemed. I mean, props to Jalen Hurts. I mean, just taking a moment to recognize him. I mean, a rookie coming into this. I mean, I know he dealt with quarterback controversy before at Alabama, but I mean, coming in NFL, I bet he probably thought he would be avoiding that. Comes into the NFL behind a guy who's paid all this money, who now stinks for the to put it lightly, stinks for the first however many games of the season, and then you're thrown into the fire. I mean, he handled it amazing. Now let's look, I guess, looking back on the trade itself. Wentz going to the Colts, reuniting with Frank Reich. How do I view it? I mean, I think that they can win 8, 9 games. I think definitely the offensive line, being, I think it is the best in the game. I think that definitely plays a role in, I think, Carson Wentz maybe not having to press as much as it seemed like he did. But I mean, he needs to go back to square one. I mean, he needs to work it back up again. I mean, he is now fallen to a low that probably he has never seen before in his career. And now the whole thing is, can Frank Reich build him back up? And I guess that's why you throw a third and a second that can turn into a first, of course, at this guy. I mean, just trying to build him up, because the Phillip Rivers experiment is over. You got Jacoby Brissett. I mean, he's a free agent. So, I mean, you bring in Wentz. You have some talent around him now. I mean, I'm intrigued to an extent. I mean, I think he can do good things. But I'm not going to sit here and say that they're going to be a top AFC team because of it, or maybe even win as many games as last year. I mean, last year with Phillip Rivers, it was, of course, on the back nine of his career, and they made it to the playoffs. And I mean, I'm not going to pick straws here, but they could have won that game. They could have won that game against the Bills. So, I mean, looking at, I think the Colts did what they have to do. Both teams, I think. I'm gonna stick in line with kind of how the ESPN analysts are saying, how analysts around football are saying. It's kind of what it had come to. The Eagles had to ship him off. He was upset, and the Colts, they get a guy to replace Phillip Rivers. I mean, interesting again seeing all those the Bears stuff with Nick Foles there and everything, and so now, I mean, where do the Eagles go from here? I mean, I saw early on Twitter, I mean, just like looking at kind of their depth chart right now, of course, with Jalen Hurts at quarterback. I mean, I have no problem with it. I just have that image of Howie Roseman taking a quarterback either at number 6 or drafting up. I mean, that would just be an absolute waste. Absolute waste. Doug Peterson gave you the number 6 pick. The number 6 pick. There was so much talent on the skill position, and for them to draft, I mean, it would just be downright stupid. I mean, if he is not fired after that decision, I'll go and fire. I mean, that's how ridiculous that would be. So, I mean, looking at it now, you got Miles Sanders, who he better be used more. I mean, there's no question about it. And hopefully Nick Sirianni, with that Colts background, establishing the run with the likes of Jonathan Taylor and the success that they had last year, that should be a top priority, especially with the weapons right now, the way it's looking. You got Goddard right now, the starting tight end, because of course there's still rumors that Ertz could be moved. I mean, I think that's the right move too. I mean, the Eagles are they now have to move into a rebuilding stage. I mean, after what just happened last year, I mean, it kind of prompted them to. And looking at it, wide receiver, you have Jalen Reagor, first round talent last year. Of course, Justin Jefferson, you look at him and what he was able to do, drafted after him. I mean, I don't. Am I just at the point where it's like, can they get it right? I mean, can they get it right? Can the Eagles get it right in the draft? Can they have a successful draft? And it seems like, again, not to bring it out broad again, but it seems like they are the only team that struggles with drafting. I mean, other than the Phillies, I mean their prospect system is as as depleted as a Wild West town. But I mean, you look at the Sixers, they picked it up in the last draft. The Flyers are picking out talent left and right in the draft. I mean, the Phillies had a good draft. I'm not going to discredit the Phils there this past draft, or was it during the past season? But the Eagles, I mean, the missed picks, the talent evaluation, it has to change. It's inexcusable how you're missing on these talented guys that are going to help the team. I mean, I'm not saying Jalen Reagor's a bad player. I'm not saying Jalen Reagor's a bad player. Don't put that on me. But Justin Jefferson, the surefire guy. I mean, they were saying in the draft, the surefire guy, Justin Jefferson. And they picked Jalen Reagor. The riskier pick. But, I mean, you can't just pick a guy from big names. I mean, here's a prime opportunity. 6th overall pick. I mean, I want Devontae Smith. Here again, he's going to the Dolphins. But Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is there for the taking. You need to do it. There is a need on the team. I mean, am I wrong to also want Micah Parsons too, to fill a desperate need at linebacker where there is, I mean, Alex Singleton is not going to get it done. Alex Singleton is not going to get it done. I mean, and Micah Parsons would be great. I mean, it's just that needs to change. The talent evaluation. I know kind of their cap hit now, of course. Sticking with Carson Wentz. I mean that's kind of in a pickle right now with what they can do in that regard. But it's going to be a long ride, and I mean I'm not ready for it. I mean, how many years has it been since really a true rebuild took place? I mean, you'd have to go back to when Carson Wentz was drafted. I mean, this was really the first year that the Eagles kind of fell off. I mean, how many years? It was 2-3 that they made the playoffs, of course, dating back to the Super Bowl run. And I mean, now they're going to be the team at the doing the rebuilding. I mean, we sat through all those years of the Sixers. We sat through the years, I guess you could say continue to sit through the years of the Phillies. And now it's the Eagles' turn. And it is going to be a wild. Thank you all for listening. If you would like to leave a like, you can do so. And if you would like to subscribe to get more Philly sports or just sports in general, let me know in the comments below. Thank you all for listening.